Hey everyone, it's Monday. I'm back in Boca. I don't know if all is good with the world though. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Do you miss me yet? I was gone for a while. Hey everyone. I have to admit I went out to London for KubeCon, and then it was my wife's birthday, and I took some well needed time off to spend time with my wife and enjoy Europe. And Europe is always did not disappoint. We were in Switzerland, we were in Lake Como and Milan, and all that those regions have to offer, and had a great time. But I'm really glad to be back here on the gang with some primo gang members as we discuss some interesting things going on in what is a never-ending interesting time in this world, it seems. Let me introduce you to who we have on today. First of all, joining us from down in Auburn, it looks like, still licking his wounds over those Gators. But hey, man, they got to the Final Four, and you got to love Bruce Pearl. But you got to love this guy too, John Willis. Hey, John, how are you?
Yeah, tough sting, but what are you going to do? So you get to the Final Four, you're looking, many teams don't get there, and the better team won. In Auburn, just got to do a promo. I finished my book. It is literally going to be up on Amazon on June 5th is the target date.
Excellent. So, The Rebels of Reason.
Yeah, the history of AI.
Beautiful. Congratulations, John. I know how much time you've put into it. Joining us, it looks like he's probably back home in Austin. Though the last time I saw him was in person in London. He is VI, CTO, principal analyst, and Futurum analyst, Guy Currier. Hey, Guy.
Hi. Great to be here. Great to be home in the great state of Austin, Texas. Great state of Texas, city of Austin. Also home, Texas is home of Houston. You might have heard of Houston.
I did hear Houston. That's the other team we beat
championship recently.
That's the other team we beat in the Final Four. But they look. You know what? They were four good teams in the Final Four. All four of those teams were and they were all four #1 seeds. I mean, right?
Yep. Never happened
Someone
before.
picked that right. All right. Moving over to New Mexico, where we did not see the Lobos in the NCAAs, but nevertheless,
they made it to the dance. They just got eliminated the first round.
All right, at least you got to dance.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and Guy, you do have a really awesome hockey team. Dallas is doing quite well.
So people from Austin don't consider Dallas part of Texas. There's a thing there.
Anyway, I would argue that people in Austin never heard of hockey as well.
Well, that's that too.
Actually, the Texas Stars are based in Austin, so that's a Dallas farm team.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Anyway, she's CEO of Deploy Hub, open source supporter extraordinaire, our own Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I was at Space Symposium with a bunch of space nerds this past week, and it was a really interesting experience to see how they're looking at software in space now.
Absolutely.
Whole different world. It's a whole different world.
Yep. And then finally, joining us from his motherland, still there, right? Are you in Silgo or Galway now?
I'm in Sligo still, where there is a limited amount of basketball, hardly no hockey, and the sports are Gaelic football and hurling, which are in full swing at the moment.
Well, Gaelic football is fun. Anyway, he's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
And enjoying my 16th straight day of sunshine between Great Britain and Ireland, which must be a world record.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
That's amazing.
That is incredible. Yeah.
Good for you. So, guys, let's kick it right off into our first topic today, and that's petty retribution by the administration against, he actually happens to be a nice guy that I know personally, Chris Krebs. Mike, what do we got here?
So the president has decided that Chris Krebs is a quote unquote bad actor and has revoked his security clearances. He used to be the head of CISA, and a lot of those former officials enjoy a certain amount of security clearance after they leave their previous administration. But he also went after the company where Mr. Krebs works at, which is called, I forgot, Signal, I think, but it'll come to me in a second. And then the issue seems to be, oh yeah, Sentinel-1, that's what it is. It is punitive, and it seems kind of petty a little bit, and not, maybe not in the interest of the country, because, well, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, last time I checked, we needed all the help we can get on cybersecurity. So it's not clear to me what the point of this other than some sort of petty rage. But Alan, what's your take?
So first of all, I don't know if he was head of CISA. He might have been deputy head of CISA. But no, maybe he was deputy, and then towards the end he was head. But the bottom line, this is what it, you know, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And this is nothing more than petty retribution against an enemy's list in the best Joe Stalin style, right? This is right out of a Stalin playbook against a cyber warrior. I know Chris Krebs, and before there was a CISA, Chris Krebs was doing the security thing. He's been a member of our community for years and years and years, a respected member. And this is nothing more than retribution, because Chris Krebs had the balls to stand up and say there was no fraud in the 2020 election. You lost, take your orange ass and go home. And now this man's coming back and trying to ruin his life. Can I be any plainer? That's what this is about. Is it petty? Yes. Is it bullshit? Yes. Does this stuff have to stop, and we as a country have to put our foot down and say this ain't Joe Stalin? Yes. I'm done.
I'm worried about the chilling effect this will have, because it's hitting Sentinel-1 too. And so I look around and I go, well, will other organizations that kind of contribute to the security of this country pull back, because they're going to be like, you know what? There's too much noise in this system. It's too much at risk, and it's hard enough doing the right thing. And now you're going to make me worry about who's going to be in charge next time out because somebody didn't like something somebody said. It seems a little, short-sighted at the very least.
It's not short-sighted. It's Stalinistic. It's called a cult of personality.
He also fired Admiral Chatfield, who was a woman. She was a rep for NATO, and she got fired because she did a talk on diversity.
Yeah.
I don't know what's worse, right? He's also fired the head of the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command.
He's gutting. He is literally. I mean, the retribution thing is, like you said, it's a duck. It walks like a duck. I mean, like, we're gonna have to be dealing with that, like, for the next 4 years. Hopefully, not the next 8 years. But what he's doing, the CISA, the cuts. I mean, he is just gutting stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they announced over 1,200 staff reductions.
Every
or something
day I've got these newsletters.
Yeah.
Josh Corman has scared me to death about critical infrastructure and cyber. Like, so now I'm like scared to death of all the ways that the Chinese can sort of destroy our water supply. But so I follow a couple of these newsletters, and every one of them will talk about the gutting of like CISA and NSA, and even like, this is like subtle, but like it's really important to understand. I've had to go through FedRAMP with a product. It is really hard and probably very bureaucratic, but now they've outsourced it. Like, so now basically they're saying that they're basically outsourcing the FedRAMP evaluation. That's like giving, the fox in the hen house, right? I mean, there's a reason why FedRAMP is really difficult to get passed and get certified. Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of waste, and I know it's like ridiculous, but the other end of it, like outsourcing it to corporations that have there's sort of no validation, or, I mean, this is the picture of what we're dealing with. We are literally just breaking down every area of our defense.
Yeah.
On that note,
certainly.
Good.
I just spent a week with, most people were wearing some kind of a uniform, and they are very concerned about cyber. The folks who are at the DoD are very concerned about cyber. So I think that they will step in and fill a void for our defense. I really do.
They don't have the resources. I've worked.
That could be true. That
spent,
could be true.
But let's guys, let's not smooth over this shit. Okay? You're talking about apples and I'm talking about oranges. The apples are that this administration is gutting the capability of our federal government to work not only in cyber, but even process people's Social Security applications and civil rights and all of the things that we count on government, wildlife protection, parks and Department of Interior stuff. All of the things that this government does is being hogtied, right? We're not going to have resources unless somehow it contributes to Elon Musk's bottom line. But that's another story. I digress. But the heart of this Krebs issue is this is Joe Stalin retribution enemies list kind of crap that we don't tolerate in this country. We don't operate like that. This man has done nothing wrong, and the company he works for is guilty by association. And we're going to because it wasn't just that he removed his security clearances, he's asked the Department of Justice to investigate them. Right? That's dismantling the government is one sin that he's going to have to answer for. But this right here, this is a Stalinistic purge, straight out of Joe Stalin book. What are we doing? Why aren't people in the streets over this? Oh, they were.
I think he's trying to lay a foundation for an argument to run for another term. And he's going to use some of that noise in the system to say he was robbed of a previous reelection. So therefore, somehow or other, that means he should be allowed to run for a third term. And I think that there is some crazy logic in there, but you say
There's
that
no
often.
Crazy logic. There's a
in
constitutional amendment that limits you to 2 terms. Period. The end. There is no, Mike, don't even give this shit the time of day, the oxygen it needs. This isn't about I was robbed. The Constitution is very clear. 2 terms. 2 terms. If you're not going to do 2 terms, you're in violation. I believe it's the 25th Amendment. Everything else is bullshit. Don't even give it the time of day.
He may not care. I mean,
he may not care if we don't care because we allow him to do this.
I was just going to say, more than 50% of the population voted for him. They knew that he was going to be on a tear when it comes to retribution.
Not more than 50% of the population voted for him. More than 50% of the 70% who voted.
Yes. More than 50% who cared enough to go out and vote.
I mean, I got to tell you, Guy, you were with me in Europe. Mike, you were there in Europe. You're still in Europe. What is the rest of the world? They're looking at us with disdain and disgust. What kind of people are we to allow this?
Oh yeah, Larry
fascism?
Summers just sort of unrelated with all the tariffs and economic stuff. Not totally unrelated, but Larry Summers just said, I think yesterday, that the basic posture of investors and other nations outside of the United States right now towards the U.S. financially is similar to, sort of in the range of, not his words, but like a failed state type scenario where an exit out of stocks is normally for the U.S. accompanied by an entry into U.S. treasuries and those safe assets. They're not considered safe in the same way anymore. And, there we go. Sorry about the little...
Can I just fact check one thing before we get 1,000 emails? The 2 terms is the 22nd Amendment. The 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment is when the cabinet decides to trade.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing to what you're talking about, Alan, about it being Stalin-esque? There's a really important twist, I think, to what's going on here, which is, and I think it speaks to Mike's point, but it's also something to keep an eye out for. The types of Stalin-esque moves that Stalin himself, did were done secretively or obscurely or with messaging and communication.
There were show trials. Joe Stalin had show trials.
True, but that's the obscure side of it. Okay. One thing that I noted about these memoranda, because these weren't executive orders, these were memoranda, not that there's a huge difference, was these are publicity opportunities for Trump at the same time as they are official presidential acts. So the Stalin-esque side of that is to instill fear, compliance in advance, like all that other sort of stuff. But also it's to signal, and this is sort of to Mike's point, how we are supposed to rethink everything along how the intention of this administration to get everybody to think and believe in lies, the thought policing of, the press and of the American public and, to some degree, world thought about all of this. And that is to pave the way for extra constitutional actions for criminal acts and all that other sort of stuff to be stated plainly as if they were a benefit instead of what they really are, which is a danger to a lot of the things that we rely on in the world. Stability and financial, personal, like all that other sort of stuff. I think that element is really important to keep an eye on, which is these are also public statements. An executive order right now is practically like a press release, and it's accompanied a lot of times by a press event.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
I would just point out that the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and the North Koreans are probably having a good laugh right now at our expense. So that can probably tell you this
They're
is not a
doing more
good
than
thing. I mean,
laughing.
look,
They're doing
Yeah.
more than laughing.
They're getting ready. Yeah.
Capitalizing.
Yes.
They're capitalizing on this. Anyway, I want to end
Wait,
this
wait.
one with this.
I-
I know Chris
I
Krebs.
would like to say one more thing, though, for all you
Right.
people who feel compelled to send emails to people and scream your heads off. Brian Krebs is not Chris Krebs. Leave him alone. Different guy.
No, they're
Different
after
life.
Brian. No, they're after Brian Krebs too. Time out. Brian Krebs is another friend of mine. And if you go to Brian Krebs' LinkedIn account, you will see that they're after him too. They're calling for his head. I know Brian a long time. I know Chris Krebs now 5-6 years personally. I know of him longer. Both of those Krebs are good people. They're not related, by the way. Both of those Krebs are good people who are doing good work in the cyber community and don't deserve this nonsense.
Amen.
Let's take a break on Techstrong Gang. I need a little drink. I'm back in a minute and I need to start drinking. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey, everybody, we're back, and whoa, cray never stops. So now the folks at OpenAI are complaining that Elon Musk and his cronies are harassing them and have filed a countersuit to that effect. And Guy, I don't know what your take is on this, but I kind of felt like, 5-year-olds in the back of the car poking at each other and going, "Mom, he's poking at me," and leave your brother alone kind of thing. But I don't know. This seems a little equally silly, but what is there something real here?
Well, yeah, I think there is something real, but I just want to start with my initial reaction, which is I am so sick of this crap. I am so sick of it. If I am forced to watch a soap opera that's almost meaningless, I want it to be on television being watched by members of my family, and I'm just exposed to it. I do not want it to be a soap opera about billionaires. and wannabes and supposedly people who are shaping the world history through their bare hands at the moment. It's just it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Now, that said, what's real here is Elon Musk have been harassing not just OpenAI and Sam Altman personally, and in the past, Mark Zuckerberg and who knows who else, but in an utterly corrupt situation, as we know. You might not agree, the audience might not agree with me that it's corrupt, but we're all aware of the situation where somebody with billions of dollars of active business with the United States government is being employed in a unconstitutional and corrupt way. Again, corrupt is my word for it. To reshape and affect that government. One of those elements that was created outside of Elon Musk's control was this $300 billion OpenAI Microsoft government program and so forth, right at the beginning of the current administration. So what Musk says and does carries a certain weight because of that influence, which may be waning, but is still there, and what the federal government is and does, that OpenAI is invested in. And then there's the frivolous lawsuits and that sort of stuff, which the large amount of investment and backing of OpenAI helps insure it against. Witness this lawsuit. Now, even if Musk's influence, which seems to be on the wane at a governmental level, was not on the wane, this is still a good thing. If somebody despicable does something good, you still want to support what they're doing, even if you think they are despicable. And I'm not saying Sam Altman's despicable or anything. I'm on record on this show saying I think OpenAI is the Yahoo of AI. I think there's just way too much fragility in that whole enterprise. But that's just a bold prediction, let's say, if I may call it bold. The point here is this. Musk is not invincible. The courts do have action. There is a way for collections of billionaires to fight against one particularly powerful billionaire. And that's what we're seeing here. And this is for the good of the industry. It's for the good of the future of AI. Even if I'm right about OpenAI in particular, one of the things that Musk did was he took his toys away however many years ago and went and, created his own sandbox with XAI and now with Grok. And, there are all sorts of players that the market will determine their various success, including Grok and including ChatGPT and so forth. But in the meantime, this kind of crap needs to be brought to a minimum as rapidly as possible. And the countersuits and all that other sort of stuff, however frivolous, that's one way. So I applaud the countersuit, at least on that basis.
I mean, the thing is, and Kai, we were talking about this earlier. There's a movie. It's called King of Hearts. It's a great movie. It's based on the idea that the inmates are running the asylum. In World War II, the Americans save a city, but the Germans leave, and they leave the asylum open, and everybody sort of portrays the mayor and all. This is a comedy of people. I mean,
Well,
even
it's more of a Greek tragedy.
Or a comedy is a tragedy, but
Your tragedy is my comedy.
Right.
I would love to see tragic things happen to some of these people. Sorry.
Like
Yeah.
Stargate.
Go ahead.
Stargate is a joke, right? We've had this discussion earlier. Musk, the lawsuit starting from like he took his toys and went home. I mean, there's some, I'm never going to defend Musk in any realm of the universe, but this whole idea that there was an agreement. I believe it's absolutely true that they had to go back to a nonprofit when they hit AGI. Now, what AGI is nonsense. And there's supposedly some paper somewhere. And all of us on this call have had lawyers and spent crazy amount of money. And I can't believe that a guy like Musk and the foundation of OpenAI, where there isn't like that paper that like somebody lost it. It's not in some file cabinet in a law firm. And you just go on and on, like Sam Altman, the whole DeepSeek, right? They're complaining now that the DeepSeek people used a distillation process against their data. So they just ran inference. And by the way, OpenAI knew they were doing it and were okay with it. And now they're complaining that DeepSeek built a model based on their model. And then Zuckerberg, we just found out through a discovery in the lawsuit that he was aware that they were reading proprietary novels off of the dark web. This is just a pollution. And no matter who wins what lawsuit, this is a polluted ecosystem that I don't think we're going to put back in the box.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen in the bigger investment area in AI when you have this argument going on. You have Stargate, who's going to get what, potentially like $500 billion from the Trump administration. Yeah. But, it's that conversation I always like to have. We in Alan, you always say the top three, if you're not in the top three, don't get in the game. And are we putting those top three are going to be just funded by a very few, and that limits the innovation?
So let me take a historical view here. Actually, before I give you the historical view, it's a guy in John's point, but let's not forget, Elon Musk did incorporate XAI, which Grok, I believe, is part of, yeah? And it supposedly has $100 billion valuation, but when you have one guy who's really putting most of the money in and he gets to determine that valuation, I don't know how real that is or not. But the other important thing to remember is the failed experiment, formerly known as Twitter, was rolled into XAI to cover up the $44 billion he paid for it, and it's probably worth a quarter of that or less now. Right? So that's part of that XAI. But look, go back to the good old days of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, IBM, the evil empire, Big Blue, the guys down in Houston at Compaq trying to create clones, what was going on up in Boston, right? The tech industry, our history is one of everybody is, it's like Dick Dastardly and Penelope Pitstop. And we remember that show we used to watch on Saturday cartoons, the Wacky Racers, doing the cavemen guys. They're all doing whatever they can to win this race.
No, but hang on, Alan. They're not trying to become immortal or colonize Mars on behalf of the human race.
No, they
or,
want to win the
bull
AI
crap like that.
prize. And the AI prize
No,
might
now
be
that
the most
what they're doing that,
valuable
but
asset.
it's this sort of grand, I don't know, global humanity vision. Jobs famously, had vision, but it was this make a dent in the universe idea. It wasn't save humanity by making myself immortal stuff. Same thing with Gates. It was we have entered this different cultural era that brings greater import, not just because it's AI, but just brings more.
But
Makes
guy,
this
they're
more
all
critical.
chasing the golden ring. They're all chasing a golden ring here. Whatever, and maybe that golden ring is not the same ring that Jobs and Gates chased, but it's a golden ring nevertheless, and that's why these people act the way they do. And there are no angels in this story either.
I mean, Bill Gates was notorious. So, I have being in a startup in Seattle at one point, getting to hear all the horror stories of people working. I mean, he sat in on every vendor that came in to try to get a business partnership with. And like whether how small they were or big they were, apparently he wanted to be in those meetings. And the first thing he would say after the sort of the potential partner left, which was, "Can we do this ourselves?" I mean, like ruthless, right? But these are
John, that's so parochial. I don't know. Am I getting through? That's so parochial. That is having to do with stealing intellectual property and using it, right? Which is serious and a problem. But it doesn't have to do with trying to reshape American culture, not to mention world culture.
I don't.
If you don't think Apple was trying to reshape world culture, go look at that 1984 commercial again.
It's a thin line, Guy. And I'm as I'm listening to both of you, I'm like, where do I fall? And I think I fall a little bit towards Alan, but I'm scared to death of these people that are at the helm right now.
I
So
agree
that
with
becomes
you.
that
But none of
becomes
them
the
are
question.
angels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we're sitting here having
shareholders-
we're having this conversation, and China is actually getting work done. It's just like what a distraction for the industry in the U.S.
Or will there come a day when the shareholders finally get tired of this nonsense and say, we're going to move on from all of you people, and thanks for your contribution, and we'll give you an award when you retire someday? Or
Didn't
because
work out
you're
so
seeing
well
this
for
even with
Apple.
Tesla, right? The shareholders are kind of going, we can't afford this nonsense with you, or we're getting pummeled here, and there's pushback.
And I'll tell you this. I mean, this is going right down to a very sort of micro level on this conversation, but Google Gemini 2.5 is off the chart. And I've been working with the OpenAI DeepSeek. I mean, right now I don't see anybody even comes close to the comparison of what I can get an output of Gemini, particularly their deep research. And so in some ways, I think we're talking about, is there going to be a big three? I mean, Google invented the transformer. They sat on it. It's in my book about how they literally didn't know what to do with it. Ilya Suskinder basically knew what to do with it. OpenAI became a thing. They missed the boat on a technology that they invented, which is the T and GPT, right? And but now they're like steady as she goes. They had to, I think they're like at a very micro
Because John,
level.
this is not a sprint; it's a marathon, and
I
the
know,
race
and in the
there's a
end,
big
maybe all
race
this,
out there.
maybe it all gets
Wacky
sorted out.
races,
Right?
wacky
Maybe
races.
Well, to bring this full circle to where Guy started it, I have a new appreciation for Dallas, because that was about crazy billionaire soap operas, and it ended with Bobby just had a bad dream. So maybe we're all just having a bad one.
Man, I
fun, man.
wish. I wish.
Touche.
There'd be a lot of
It's all a
good
dream
news.
anyway. Just ask the Buddha. I
Yeah,
mean, and
AI
I believe that.
halluc-
I believe
It's an
that.
AI hallucination. All right,
It
we're
is
gonna
a-
hallucinate right in. We break right here. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about model context protocols. Nobody knew what this thing was 4 months ago, maybe even 5 months ago, and now it seems to be on everybody's lips as the way we're going to integrate AI agents. John, I know you've been following this whole space pretty closely, but can you bring everybody up to speed here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was November. I didn't go back and check, but I saw, when it first came out, I wrote an article about it because I thought maybe, I mean, one of the problems that you have when you start getting more advanced in sort of scaling AI from just Jupyter notebooks to some type of architecture and then, sort of the whole agentic conversation is less than a year old, really, in anger. Like you saw this opportunity for something like a webhooks or something like that. And I'm not trying to say it's as simple as webhooks, but it's different. But like there had to be the integration. And when Anthropic announced this thing, I followed a couple of people who like explained it really well. And I thought, yes, this will be a thing. I mean, it is clearly a missing ingredient. The fact that it's become like a household name acronym in from November to now is just it's I mean, we could say vibe coding for another discussion, but it's like, who heard of vibe coding 6 months ago, right? Like now you can't you can't walk around a hallway without hearing the word vibe used in some sentence. Yeah, I mean, it is it's sort of an API like protocol. It's very clever, and you had to deal with it's very, I'll get yelled at by the people who like have written the code themselves, but the MCP code. But it sort of plays into this new paradigm of probabilistic functions and probabilistic calling. You saw like the evolution of sort of the tools, and then became functions in OpenAI, and LangChain had this concept of tools. And what's unique about all this evolution is you don't just call a deterministic function. You create an incredible amount of meta to describe the function and use the natural language to discover it. And it sort of changes everything about how you work with like gluing stuff together. You like literally it becomes more of a probabilistic, but a high probability that if you get the meta right, okay, I want to go ahead and write a Google Doc. And then I want to create an email to all the employees that have described this thing. And and the way you get those functions is through sort of the inference.
So are you saying that what is it's doing is basically maintaining context across the different tools?
Well, what it is creating an API structure to define your tools so that an agent can find those tools. And the tools, the way it finds the tools is not a deterministic, like I'm calling this specific API. I'm literally using more of a sort of natural language prompt process to discover that function. And this is really at a high level, but if you break it down to where it is functionally, it is basically an API that allows you to sort of work from application to a server to a model.
So I could do like create documents that go and reach out to both Salesforce and Jira, for example.
Yeah, and so that has existed for a couple of years now in something like LangChain tools. And then you saw like Google had Vertex and their Vertex functions, right? And like Google has some great examples in Vertex of doing exactly, well, more in the Google space, but you can do it anything. So you define a tool, and exactly what you said, Tracy. I could say I want to do this, do this, do this. And the reason why it was called LangChain originally is this chaining of functions or tools. And then you had agentic processes come out, which literally sort of made like protocol, like not generic protocols, but like each product itself had like Crew AI, LangGraph, all had this capability to glue things together. Again, mainly on inference. What MCP announced is a way to sort of consolidate and create a protocol, if you will, so that everybody could use. And it started out with only Anthropic, but some really smart people immediately. I thought it was an Anthropic thing until I was at Field Day, and one of the customers in the Field Day that was at the last one that I was involved with told, "Oh yeah, we've got an MCP," and I'm like, "Doesn't it have to be that? Can you only use Claude?" And they're like, "No, we figured out it's open source for you." And now everybody's figured that out, and every product now. So it's sort of crowdsourced its way into be the common protocol for doing agentic work.
Right. So now, and now there are going to be MCP servers that you can connect multiple APIs through to kind of integrate various agents. And in my most simplistic mind, I'm kind of like, well, it's kind of self-describing. It's a data neutral kind of format. Maybe it's kind of like XML for AI agents in my mind.
Oh yeah, well, oh god, right. You get more letters now than you got on the first segment, but anyway.
My brain, I don't know much about MCP. I'm just learning it. But now after this conversation, it's like, wouldn't this be perfect for DevOps?
Yeah, no, oh yeah. In fact, yeah, I mean, I think the articles about Solo adding something called K-Agent, which is MCP based, but it absolutely, I mean, it's good for everything. Certainly, it's beautiful. And I will tell you, Tracy, I mean, I don't know what you have scheduled for the rest of the day. You'll be an expert in it. If you start after this call, you'll know as much, probably more about it than me. And then you will be like you won't be able to shut up about it because you'll be so enthused. I think this is my prediction, but because it's right. I watched Elizabeth Hendricks, who's the sort of guru of testing, last week at Gene's forum, and she finally tried Cursor. Now, I mean, and I mean this in the most beautiful way. She can't shut up about it. And she's an old school. She's as old as I am, older than I am, and so I love
Easy, John. Easy.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. All right. Well, she's probably not gonna listen to this. But the point being, I'm really enjoying people like Chris Hoff, and I would be really happy if you click on MCP and find ways to use it with the way in your domain, because I think that's starting to happen now. The people are sort of jumping in, and I mean that's the biggest thing about MCP. It's I talked to James Urquhart the other day. He was, forever he was against all this. Oh, we can't do this, and how he's all in on agents and MCP. And so it warms my heart to say, let's stop fighting this stuff and let's figure out how to use it in the best way of people like you, Tracy, who know what you're doing and have the background. And I think that's where this stuff is going to get incredibly interesting. I'll get off my soapbox now, but
No, all right.
Can
Yeah,
I can I ask
Pete,
though?
go
Like I
ahead, Guy.
how is this? I mean, other than its rapidity, which is true of sort of everything AI. How is this different from like every other technology, which starts off, proprietary-ish and with not silos, but lots of little things going on that don't really work together, and then protocols or commonalities. I don't want to say standards necessarily, but those sort of things sort of appear. I mean, MCP. I saw it not long after Anthropic announced it, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is really cool. This has a lot of promise." And then now it's there's manic activity around it, and it looks like it's heading towards But what's different about this that happens in technology over and over?
what's different and it's the same is how it's kind of the system, the ecosystem adopts, and this is being adopted, right? So it is no better, no less. I mean, we'll say it's the first sort of protocol for dealing with this probabilistic new way of tooling. But like I said, this started with LangChain 3 years ago
Mm-hmm.
before they had LangGraph. They had this sort of tool. They had even for OpenAI defined functions. They actually
I
had
have to admit that every time, like I did this with LangChain, I did this, I think with OpenText back over and over again. I see this like, wow, this might become a hugely successful vendor that's core to everybody, and everybody's using it. And then a standard comes along, and then I'm like, oh, of course there should be a standard
I
for
don't know if
this.
there's going to be a standard because it's already mutated, right? Like IBM, like is a dark horse in this game, but they got something called BAI, and they've defined something called ACP, right? So it's MCP, but they think that I'll say there's some thought process there that MCP might not be around, and they want to create a protocol that's going to be consistent for their Granite. Google just announced the 80K or the A2A, and it's really interesting because the MCP is more of a sort of a vertical construct. You go from application to server or multiple servers and get your answer, where the A2A is agent to agent by Google. So they're trying to same the same process, but they're using more like I dare to say service mesh like concept. But so
Well,
again,
no, that's what Solo IO is, a service mesh concept.
right, but I don't think they're using the pure MCP implementation. So even though they are, yeah, I mean, Solo ID is like I didn't even know about it until I read Mike's article. But yeah, I think it's fascinating because like they sit in Kubernetes, they manage the service mesh, they manage Envoy and Istio, right? And they're saying that they're using MCP and KA agent, to solve, they say, the DevOps problem. It's definitely worth looking into. I'm a big fan of Solo. I'm not a fan of the CEO, but I am a fan of, but that's my personal beef. But I'm a fan of what they've been doing since day one. And
So for the record, I like the CEO there.
she was rude to me. She was extremely rude to me.
Was she? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She's been
That's
nothing.
me. Hey, okay.
But
In the grand
that's,
scheme of
John, everyone else loves you. Don't worry.
So, well, does this need to be donated to something? Because
Well,
I'm
isn't
not
it already
seeing that
open?
open source
Open source.
AI consortium or something.
It's all open. The question is, does it need to be part of a foundation so no one? But it's open. People can fork it. Look, you know what? You got to let these open source things play out. When the right time comes, something will happen. But in the meantime, you got to let the market forces do its thing here. And, that's open source.
Brother, market forces are moving at light speed here. The time's now.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah, that's the one. So I may see the pattern and have lived through this over and over or whatever. I might be all blasé in a one sense, but the lightning speed with which these things are going in AI,
Isn't that the danger of doing anything formal? Because, like, again, like, who knows? I mean, Google just dropped this A2A, right? Like, and it's already an agent-to-agent based, which theoretically could, like, kibosh MCP, right? And so the problem about, like, is so early, things are changing so rapidly, the ability to create stuff, I created a game yesterday that I've been wanting to create for 10 years now. And I saw Ethan Malik talk about how he used Gemini to create this game that, do a prompt. And I created this game in like 5 minutes. I had to take a second shot at it to make it work, but in a 15-minute, it was a fully functioning game that I've been thinking about, for 10 years. Like the point is any type of consortium, any type of product right now is absolutely dangerous even to invoke, because you don't know what it's going to look like in a week from now.
Yeah, this got to play out. You got to let this boil a bit.
It's got to play. Yeah, it's a sort of Cambrian explosion right now that really we don't.
And there will be the blowback.
So, John, was that a new drinking game you invented, or what's going on there?
No, it's something my son came up with like 10 or 15 years ago. It's tic-tac-toe with dots. The idea that you have dots. You take the two simplest games, and you take the dots, and you got to win tic-tac-toes in the thing, and you get different points for a tic-tac-toe and dot. So it takes two brain-dead simple games and turns it into a massive strategy game.
There you go. You heard it here first. John Willis, the game master. Guys, that's going to wrap up our Techstrong Gang for today. What an interesting conversation. What interesting times we live in. Stand up out there. Stand up. Don't let them keep you down. It's the start of another week on Techstrong Gang. We'll be back tomorrow with more. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy the rest of Techstrong TV immediately following Techstrong Gang today. But until then, on behalf of Mike, Guy, Tracy, John, I'm Alan Schimmel, and we're out.